Joining me now is Sean Spicer, Communications Director for the Republican National Committee. Hi, Sean. Good to see you.
Good morning, Alex.
So let's talk about the polls, because he's leading them. He is drawing the big crowds, and on every channel he's appearing. He's in every newspaper. Should Donald Trump be the Republican nominee?
Well, I don't mean to pour cold water on this, but at the end of the day, this is really up to voters. We're going to get more voters involved in the process than ever before under the new rules changes, so more people, more states will have an opportunity to vote. But ultimately, it's up to the voters. It's not up to the RNC. It's not up to anyone in Washington. It's going to be up to the individual voters in all the states, the activists who go out, put signs up, who go to the polls, to make that decision who's going to be our standard bearer in 2016.
Okay, that's all true, but there are some big players behind the scenes, and they're weighing in on this. The New York Times' Nicholas Comfessor, I know you saw the article. It's very interesting today on Trump, and he writes, quote, "Quiet conversations have begun in recent weeks among some of the Republican Party's biggest donors and normally competing factions, all aimed at a single question: how can we stop Donald Trump? Republican strategists and donors have assembled focus groups to test negative messages about Mr. Trump. They have amassed dossiers on his previous support for universal health care and higher taxes. They have even discussed the creation of a super PAC to convince conservatives that Mr. Trump is not one of them." Is there a quiet Republican campaign to stop Trump?
Maybe. I mean, again, I don't mean to back out of the question, but at the RNC, our job isn't to worry about that. It's to let each of these campaigns run their own campaign. Our job is to make sure that that infrastructure, the data infrastructure, the political infrastructure, the ground game, to go to whomever the nominee is. We don't get involved in the back and forth between candidates, either supporting them or going against another one. That's up to each campaign and to the various donors and activists out there around the country.
Okay, how about the new NBC News Marist poll out today? And the numbers find that Trump, he's got a 16-point lead in New Hampshire. John Kasich, second place there. In Iowa, Trump has a 7-point lead. You've got Ben Carson, a close second. Do you read this as a rejection of GOP orthodoxy?
No, I mean, I think two things. One, it's very early, meaning that Labor Day typically kicks off the political season. So let's see what happens. You mentioned the earlier segment that I think the next couple debates are going to be rather important. But I think that there's a general frustration on both sides. I mean, you look at the rise in that same poll of Bernie Sanders. I think there's a rather frustration throughout this country with what's happening in Washington. And so, one, I think some of the outside candidates, Carly Fiorina, Ben Carson, Donald Trump, are sort of benefiting from that. But I think when you look at the rest of the field, whether it's Ted Cruz, Chris Christie, Jeb Bush, Scott Walker, Rand Paul, they're all talking about how to make the system work better, how to make Washington more effective, and how they'll do a better job. So it's a theme that, frankly, runs through all of the top 17 candidates.
Okay. But while Trump is ahead among the GOP in New Hampshire and Iowa, if you look at the general matchup numbers between Jeb Bush and Clinton, Jeb Bush fares better, beating Clinton and Biden in Iowa, also in New Hampshire. Might that be why the establishment fears Donald Trump's candidacy, that he can't win a general election?
No, I mean, you look at that same poll. I mean, Trump's beating Hillary in Iowa. He's tied with her in New Hampshire. But you look among all of the candidates, frankly, even those with some that don't benefit from the same level of name recognition, our candidates from up and down the ballot are actually either tying or beating her in each of these battleground states. And it's not just Iowa and New Hampshire. You look at Michigan and Pennsylvania. Hillary Clinton is damaged goods, and I think that's why the more important topic in my mind is the cratering that her campaign is facing. The rise of Bernie Sanders. He's up now 9 in New Hampshire. He was down 10 in July. You look at the lead that he's cut her lead in half in Iowa. And Vice President Biden, a gentleman who isn't even in the race, is getting anywhere from 15 to 20% support without any campaign being run on his behalf or officially entering the race. That, to me, shows tremendous weakness for Hillary Clinton. I think if I were a Democrat right now, I'd be very, very concerned with what the brand of their standard bearer is looking like.
Okay, but flip side of that, do you worry then that if Vice President Biden gets into the race, that's your worst nightmare?
No. I think Vice President Biden is has ably, served this country ably, but I think his policies and his history have long since. I mean, he first ran for president in 1988. I think the country's ready for a new direction. I think Vice President Biden would not be the answer to this. I think we have tremendous research on his positions, on his past statements. I feel very confident about our ability to beat everybody, including Hillary.
Okay, let's talk about the Hugh Hewitt interview. Sean, was this a gotcha interview, or might it have been just a fair exposure of gaps in Trump's knowledge?
Well, look, I've said it before, but I think that all of our candidates, I mean, I don't think it's a gotcha. It's a fair question to ask somebody, but I think there's 200 world leaders, factions within each country. I think if you want to quiz somebody in their understanding of foreign policy, domestic policy, healthcare, the economy, those are all fair questions. But I think there needs to be a baseline of understanding that no candidate, including the incumbent president, the vice president, the secretary of state, can be well versed in every world leader, every faction, and so that's just part of the process. Is that people were going to, I think, not know everything, and that's should not come as any surprise.
Okay, I want to take a look at next week's debate real quick, because CNN adjusted the rules for the debate to add an 11th spot on stage. That position is likely going to Carly Fiorina. Did the RNC put any pressure on CNN to make that change?
We did have discussions with them. Ultimately, the criteria is up to each of the networks, but I think that we did have discussions with them trying to ensure that CNN, that the top 10 or the main stage that they had accurately reflected the current state of the race. CNN came to us with some ideas. They asked us what we thought of them, and we said that we thought that they did a phenomenal job of ensuring that the amended criteria accurately reflected the current state of the race.
Okay, well, Sean Spicer, thanks for this discussion here on MSNBC. Appreciate it. See you again.
You bet.
Thanks.
Happy Labor Day.
Okay, you too. The migrant